if you give up too quickly, you don't realize the benefits. And usually it's the benefits that you feel. It's the progress that you make that keeps you doing it. But it takes time. Like you're undoing some things, potentially some bad habits that you've formulated over years and years and years. You got to give it a minute.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Adapt You podcast. And this is a very special episode because it is the introduction of the Change 30 series. And really the introduction of our guest is the introduction of our co-host for the Change 30 series. So not only are you going to be getting the opportunity to meet Brian Abbale, who's today's guest, but Brian's going to be a very integral part of the show for one episode a month for a 30-day challenge that we'll be doing called the Change 30. So with that said, Brian asked me to make a very inspirational introduction of him. And you'll find that the information he provided me, you could get a little bit of a taste of Brian's personality. So I'm super, super psyched to introduce him. We're going to talk for a minute about his educational, professional, and athletic achievements because they are amazing. So let's start with Brian here. From an educational perspective, in 5th grade, his drawing of an old woman called Gertrude was selected as the cover art of the year and was selected to be on the yearbook. To not be outdone in 6th grade, his drawing of a naked woman who remains nameless earned him in-school suspension. He received an A in summer school after failing 10th grade social studies. So what a miraculous turnaround to going from complete failure to getting an A and crushing that summer school, which probably ruined his summer. He actually went to my alma mater. We actually went to the same college. We weren't there at the same time. Brian's a few years younger than me, 4 exactly. So he began at Siena College as a biology major, but he decided to switch to what my degree was, which is marketing and management, for probably the same reason. It was a lot easier. He won countless awards for beer pong double tournaments at Siena College Towns in his 4-year career. For those of you who don't know who beer pong is, it's throwing a small ping pong ball into a cup of beer. And if you're good at it, your night is not as long as those who are not so good at it. Enough about his educational career. Let's get a little bit and jump into his professional career. Funny story, I was actually Brian's first boss out of college. I hired him as a sales manager of ADP, automatic data processing, where he was probably his biggest accolades was not his sales numbers, but moreover, it was the fact that he was the unofficial MVP of the company annual flag football championships of 2003. It was an epic game, one that I remember so well. And Brian was just unbelievable I think he had 6 or 7 touchdowns that game. So that was probably the highlight of our professional working relationship and something that I needed to make mention of here in this podcast introduction. Now, Brian left went into the pharma school and industry, spent a few years there, and then he decided to go work in the family hardware business in 2008 as a store manager of the Crescent Ace Hardware up in the upstate New York area. Ultimately, he purchased the store in 2018, has become the owner operator ever since. So Brian is a true entrepreneur as it relates to his transition from a typical traditional high school and college career to now being a business owner. Brian then decided to, he dabbled in some athletics. So he actually holds the record for the shortest long jump in middle school history in 7th grade track and field because he was too focused on trying to keep cool and keep moving forward than he was in actually jumping. He was the 4th string modified running back in 7th and 8th grade. His first and only snap that he ever took, he blacked out and ended up getting called for a face mask and a 15-yard penalty. So football was not his sport, but Brian is an incredible athlete because later, as I mentioned, he was the flag football MVP of our company flag football game. He finished 3rd grade high school Ironman competition. They finished 3rd in the high school Ironman competition his senior year for benching 85% of his body weight 33 times. Pretty impressive. Then from there, as he progressed in his professional career, he actually earned an NASM, which stands for National Academy of Sports Medicine personal training certification in 2015. So Brian really shifted to having more of a focus on the health and fitness space and is an incredibly fit and incredibly mindful individual. Not to be outdone, Brian has done something that not many of us probably can do. I don't think I can do this, even in my fittest stage. Brian, to top it off from an athletic perspective, can hold a plank, the type of plank you do in the gym, for 7 minutes. So that said, let me introduce to the show our new co-host for the Change 30 podcast series, Brian Abbale. All right, Brian, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you.
Dude, it's awesome to be here. It's my first podcast, and I'm really excited. And just a point of clarification on that 7-minute plank, that was a solid 3 years ago. So I think I could probably do about maybe 3 minutes now, but I'll get back to that. I'll get back to that.
Listen, 3-minute plank is solid. You know what the Guinness Book of World Records is for the longest plank?
7 minutes.
No, just shy of that. I think it's, and I will have this edited back into the video later, but I'm almost positive it's from somebody that was over 60 years old, and it was over 5 hours. I'm almost positive.
I got a ways to go, is what you're telling me.
So I mean,
that's unbelievable.
You're right there, like you're right at the cusp. Yeah,
goals.
You're right at the cusp.
Yeah. Well, it's a progression, right? I'm getting there. It starts with 7 minutes. You didn't jump into 5 hours.
And actually, Brian, I think you're motivating me right now in terms of maybe another potential Change 30 episode. So this could be
the plank challenge.
The plank challenge. Wow.
30,
This wasn't one, but I think one has just been born.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple that become eligible throughout this conversation. We'll see. I just want to say one thing. I was a little disappointed that I didn't get a Levante type introduction. I feel like I deserve that because I did Saratoga youth boxing for about 2 months.
This is true. For those who haven't listened to, I believe it was episode number 2. I made the introduction to the boxer awesome. As in the form of a Michael Buffer, which I would argue a solid Buffer attempt. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Doubt.
So Brian, I am thoroughly pumped to have you on the show, not only as a guest, but moreover as a co-host to a new, we'll call it sub-series of the Adapt You podcast, something that I'm super stoked about because I really think it embodies what the podcast is all about, and that's change.
Yeah.
So Brian and I, obviously, as you heard to the introduction, we have a past. I was actually Brian's first boss, right?
Correct. Yeah. First boss out of college.
First boss out of college.
Yeah.
So I provided him gainful employment right out of college.
Absolutely.
He must have crushed that interview. And what's interesting is, Brian, and this is going back 20 some odd years ago, right, Brian?
Yeah, almost 18.
And over the years, we sort of lost touch, right? And we stayed in contact through social media, but I moved, you lived, still up in New York. I moved down to the Carolinas, but we stayed in contact through social media. And it was, through COVID, everyone being locked in their doors, I started to maybe find myself spending a little bit more time on social media than was probably considered healthy. And
into the swamp.
And I found myself having really enjoying like what you were talking about when I talked about health, when I talked about fitness, when I talked about mindset, and we're not going to get into it, but even your political views, right? I was like, Brian is on point. This is my boy. And I reached out. We started, spending a little more time chatting, and when I made a decision to relaunch this podcast, there was something that I wanted to do, an idea that I had, and it turned out that you had an idea as well, which we later learned about a podcast and about a show that could really serve a purpose, and that is to help people. So for those who listen to this podcast is about one thing, to sum it up, one word, and that's change. And that's helping people through the processes of change. So we bring in a lot of guests that have been through things or have experiences or have certain skill sets to help people change in certain areas. But the reality is, in order to change, and to change often, it's something you need to intentionally put yourself into those difficult and challenging situations in order to go through that process of change. Those different stages of the process, from the excitement when it starts, to the challenge where you want to quit, to the part where you really want to quit, to the part where you start to see progress and actually go through that elastic process of your body changing, your mind changing, your physical appearance changing, whatever it is that you're doing starts to take effect. And I wanted to do this thing where for 30 days, we would pick a challenge and do something that normally I wouldn't want to do. And before I embarked on this, I was like, man, there's so many things I want to do, but I know I'll probably quit. I'll probably not make it through it. I need a right-hand man. I need a brother in arms. I need a soul sister maybe
Yeah.
not maybe not the next last one, but I needed somebody to do this with me that shared the same mindset.
Let's go, girl.
And let's do it, girl. And I was super pumped about it. And that's really where our conversation started, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think you kind of nailed it where you said it was two ideas. So my thought that I brought to you is that I wanted to take otherwise complex ideologies or theories that were designed to provoke improvement, self-improvement. And I wanted to dumb that down a little bit, right? And like just be able to disseminate that information to listeners in a way that was clear and easy to understand. Here's what we're doing. Here's why. Here's what you can expect to benefit, and here are the potential risks. So my thought was maybe we just have a podcast on that. Take something that people don't want to spend hours and hours and hours investigating on their own, and let's do that work, that research for them, and bring them the bullet points, right? And then and it was your kind of your thought process of, well, hey, this could meld really well with something I was thinking about, the 30-day challenge. Let rubber hit the road. Let's just do these things ourselves and get some empirical data and say, all right, yeah, we did this challenge for 30 days straight. This is what we were hoping to gain. Here's what we actually did gain. It was worth it, or maybe it wasn't worth it. It became habit. I'm going to keep doing it. Or maybe that was a rough 30 days and sayonara. glad that's over
Never
with.
doing that again. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure we'll have a couple of those.
I
So
think we probably definitely will. But that's
yeah.
all the
And
part and parcel of it, right? Is giving it a try and seeing it
yeah,
through, right? Isn't it? I mean, that to me is what it's all about. Because most people, I think, they pull the ripcord early.
definitely. Definitely. And like you said, if you're doing it on your own, it's much harder to adhere to it for a long enough time to even make it a habit. If you give up too quickly, you don't realize the benefits. And usually it's the benefits that you feel. It's the progress that you make that keeps you doing it. But it takes time. Like you're undoing some things, potentially some bad habits that you've formulated over years and years and years. You got to give it a minute. You got to stick with it for 2 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 6 months, till you start to realize the benefits of those changes that you put into place. So having an accountability partner is huge, and obviously doing this challenge is really holding our feet to the fire. So
It
I think it's
is.
great.
And I'm grateful for you and wanting to go on this journey together to be able to struggle through it.
Yeah,
Because the reality is, change um, is compounded failure over time until
yeah.
you reach success, right? So,
Took me
and
a long time to learn that. I'm still
it,
learning that, but yeah, it's very true.
and I think it's something. Tell me if you agree that that can be conditioned, right? So sometimes change
Hmm.
in our life, it's something we take upon ourselves. Like, hey, I want to lose weight, or I want to do
Yeah.
this type of workout, or I want to this or that, and you have to have a reason, right? A strong
Yes.
reason to be able to get you through those hard times, those failures, those ups and downs, those good days and bad days. But then, quite often, change is just forced upon us, right?
Right. Right.
You get hit by a car and all of a sudden you can't walk, right? So now you
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
to change, right?
Yeah.
You have some debilitating disease and now you have certain dysfunction, or, a divorce, or what the
Hmm.
things that life throws at us, that if we're not malleable, we're not able to change and to
Right.
adapt, then, life's going to pretty much suck, right? And
Yeah.
so those
Definitely.
who have the ability to change are going to have a great life. So forced change, forced habitual action of trying something and challenging something and getting used to the suck of change,
Yeah.
right? Will
Yeah.
allow you to, when something gets slapped on your plate that maybe you weren't expecting, you're like, I got this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like COVID.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect example. Absolutely. But I think it's so funny because people tend to inherently resist change and try to avoid it, but it's going to happen. So you might as well kind of lean into it and learn ways to be able to be adaptable, like you said. And I think we'd be remiss not to mention that the purpose of these challenges that we're going to kind of get into here is it's all about it's self-improvement and betterment and how to live, like I think you say in your intro to every podcast, which is so great, but it's basically how to live your best life. And that's it's not doesn't happen by accident. Sometimes you got to put in the effort, and you have to get outside of your comfort zone, because that's where growth happens. If you just stay where everything's nice and easy and comfortable, that's all well and good until change happens, until something comes along and messes up that beautiful little landscape that you got there. You got to be able to get to move and adapt and work with it. And so when you just look at the state of health, mental health, physical health in the country, where you got 6 out of 10 people suffering from a chronic disease, and 85% of those chronic diseases are behavioral related. So I mean, you can make those changes. You can get yourself better. You don't have to keep falling down that same path. And your later years in life, you get your health span to line up with your lifespan, right? So like your late years, you're not debilitated for the last 10 years of your life in and out of a hospital or a doctor's office, and not even knowing up and down because you got dementia or whatever. You can actually just live a long, full, healthy life if you take some steps along the way. So we're going to try some of these strategies to help get the most out of life. Then that will hopefully help people live more healthily with more vitality and more enthusiasm and everything, and just get a zest for life again and realize there's another way. There's a better way. You got one shot at it. Let's make it happen. Let's go.
Let's do it. Yeah, because the reality is Brian and I are no different than anybody that's listening right now or watching, and that, we both have, full-time businesses that we run. Brian has a successful hardware store in upstate New York. I run a marketing firm, and we have children, we have wives, we have families, and those can be are amazing, but they can also be excuses for people, right? I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the time to do that. The reality is you do have the time, right? It's just you're not committed to making that change, to making that adjustment, or it's not that important to you, right?
And that comes down to the why. You got to have a reason.
It's got to be tied down to the why 1,000%. And if you don't have that alignment, you're not going to do it. And that's and for us, part of the alignment of some of these challenges are really for you, the listener, right? We're going to put ourselves through these situations. Now we have reasons, which we're going to get into as we talk about each of the challenges here in a minute. We have reasons why we're doing this, but the overall reason is to hopefully be a light in your day, to show you that two normal dudes with normal lives, we that have the ability to make time for something and to commit to it. As much as our lives are chaotic, we still made a commitment to it and was able to get it done, right?
Yeah.
Or I hope is able to get it done.
Yeah,
And
that's the plan.
that's the plan, right? And we're going to chronicle this, right? So let's talk first about the structure of how the episodes are going to go, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it is that we're going to be doing for the next 6 months. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah.
So the structure is pretty simple. Whatever challenge we're going to do, and the first one we're going to be doing, I'm going to talk about it now so I can talk about it in context, is we're doing yoga for 30 days straight. Yoga.
Stretch Armstrong.
You're talking about two of probably the most inflexible individuals in the world. Brian, as stated, owns and operates a hardware store. And I would gander that I could probably bend a 6x6 piece of wood better than Brian is able to bend his body. Is that an accurate statement, Brian?
I don't know what my toes feel like. I cannot. I've never touched them.
He's never touched his toes. I'm actually not sure how he puts his shoes on in the morning, to be honest with you. Brian is a fellow athlete, a shoehorn. Brian's a fellow athlete. And with those sports, that athleticism comes with most men and women, tight hamstrings, hips, lats. I mean, neither of us can do an overhead squat. We can do overhead presses, we can squat, but to do the two together, we lack that mobility, and that's just that's hindering us in life. So we've shied and run and sprinted away from yoga our entire lives. I've done one yoga class in my life.
Done a couple. Yeah. They were miserable.
Done two. Yeah, they're not, and they're miserable because we're not good at them, right? So that's the point. Most people do what they're good at, and they stay very unilateral, and they never change and they adapt. So this is going to suck, right? But there's reasons why we're doing it. So what we've done is Brian has marshaled a multiple certified yoga instructors, top in the industry, to be able to guide us through that journey in a healthy fashion. We'll be doing yoga every day. And that'll be another episode in the first challenge episode. But for every day, we'll be learning how to do yoga and doing it for 30 minutes the first week and working up to an hour a day. But it's every day we're doing yoga. And the first 10 minutes of the episode will be Brian and I speaking with the expert, expressing like, hey, this is what we're looking to do, this is the change we're hoping to hopefully see, and
Yeah.
this is what we expect. So there's sort of our expectations, and then every week we'll check in for a few minutes on a podcast where we'll talk about how we're feeling, how it's going. We'll record that in week 2 and 3. So we have week 1, 2, and 3. And then the last, at the end of the 30 days, we'll get back on with the expert and we'll talk about how it went. Now we're going to
Yeah.
string all those episodes together in about a 45-minute segment where you'll experience the entire month from start to finish in one episode. And hear us check in as we go through it, with the goal of you hearing our pain and suffering, right, Brian, as we
Yeah.
go through this, but
Yes.
hopefully hearing the struggle one week and then later hearing
Progress.
the improvement and the
Yeah.
progress.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Well said.
so
Yeah.
that's the lineup. That's how we intend to do. And,
And we're going to be
Brian,
very candid about our experience too, right? I mean, I don't think it works any other way. We're not going to sugarcoat it. If it's something that we feel is not beneficial, then we'll be upfront about that. But if we really do find a sincere benefit from it, we're going to share that as well. And we'll talk a little bit too, because some of the challenges that we're going to do are a little bit maybe more aggressive than some people may like. So you can pick and choose bits and pieces of what we do. So we'll talk a little bit about what we discussed, the minimal effective dose as well. So where we might do an hour of yoga every day or lead up to that, doesn't mean that the listeners have to do 60 minutes of yoga every single day. Perhaps, we'll see if there's a sweet spot that you'll
a
still
sweet
see a
spot.
benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. The goal is to, at the end of this, share, as you said, with the listener, like, this was good. I'm going to
Yeah.
continue to do this, or as you said earlier, Brian, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life. So you kind of, whatever challenge speaks to you. You can't do an hour of everything every day. There is only so much time in the day, but if you can sprinkle in 10 minutes and that's effective of one discipline and 15 minutes of another discipline or strategy, and then you just make up kind of a life plan that helps you optimize how you feel. So
100%. And Brian, talk for a minute about the metrics, the way in which we're going to measure the success or failure of something outside of the anecdotal, like how we're feeling and just
sure.
sort of gabbing about it, but how we're going to
Yeah,
measure
there's
it.
the subjective side, right, which we will discuss, like how did we feel? Just yeah, more subjective values, but objectively, specifically with yoga, for examples, we'll have indicator poses and indicator stretches, right? So we'll start out. There might be a pose that we get that we can't even get into. We can't even hold it for 2 seconds without falling over. But then hopefully by the end of it, we are able to get into that pose and hold that pose. And we'll look at indicator stretches within yoga movements to see, okay, so in the beginning, we were able to, do a bend and stretch our hamstrings and get halfway down our shins. But maybe by the end of it, we're able to actually touch our toes or get our palms on the floor. Who knows? So we're not
You
expecting
be
miracles,
reunited
but
with your toes. It's going to be a big
yeah, I
moment.
can't wait. That'll be huge. So yeah, so there'll be indicator movements. And some of the other things that it depends on the challenge, I think, in terms of the
Talk about the
objective measures.
biometrics side of it is for a second, in the ring and all of that we'll be using.
Yeah, yeah, which is great, and I think that will come into play. So I have an Aura ring, and Derek has a mattress actually, which is amazing. I didn't even know they did this, but it'll monitor biometrics like Derek was saying, such as your average heart rate, your heart rate variability, which I'll explain in a second, your breath rate, and your sleep. So like whether you're in light sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep, and those things are important to keep an eye out for and to measure and see if you're seeing improvements. If you're not seeing improvements in those areas, then maybe it's not as beneficial as you may have thought. But so heart rate variability is a great indicator of your recovery. So if you have a high heart rate variability, which is basically the amount of time in between heartbeats, right? You would think that it's like what are those palindromes or
So
something
that's
that.
consistent, right?
Yeah. So like it hits. You think it's like if you're 60 seconds or 60 beats a minute, you think every second your heart beats, but that's not actually true. There's a little variation in between, and the higher the variation, the more well rested and well recovered you are to attack the day. So if you have a low heart rate variability that day, you might want to take a rest day and take it easy. If your heart rate variability is high from the night before, then go get it, So
Mhm.
there's tools. It's like skills and pills, or like biohacks, I guess. It's not even a hack, but just tools that you can use to help kind of direct your training and how you kind of lead your life. So those things are uh, items that we are going to track and we'll share. So we'll be able to say, like, if we do a meditation challenge, for example, we'll see, did we get more restorative sleep at night? Did our breath rate go down? Instead of breathing 15 breaths per minute, maybe it went down to 12 breaths per minute. So we'll be able to monitor that stuff, and I think that's kind of a cool thing. So we'll actually
For
have some hard data to share, not just us
exactly.
saying, yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah,
Yep.
and there's obviously that's important as well because there's certain enjoyment factor that needs to go into it. But the idea is that we're gonna go through some suck, right? Like, so let's
Yeah.
talk about these. We're gonna share with the audience our first like 6 or 7
Yeah.
challenges, and kind of what we're anticipating with each one, and
Yep.
then what we're that's good and maybe not so good. So
Sure.
obviously yoga is the first one, right? So
Yep.
for me, yoga, I think Brian, you're probably very similar. I as a triathlete, I always swam, bike, run,
Yep.
and weight trained, right? So it was always work hard, beat the body up, and I never did anything outside of foam rolling and some light stretching on the floor, that type of stuff. But I never did yoga. My
Right.
coach was always like, "Do yoga," and I was
Yep.
always like, "I'm training like 18 hours a week. Like I don't have to like something's got to give. Not
Yeah.
doing yoga." So now at the ripe old age of 45, I'm like, I need to do more yoga and less of that other stuff because I'll be honest, my
Yeah.
body feels it. So
With age comes
I'm
wisdom.
with and just stiffness. Let's be honest,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
and inflammation and all that good stuff. So for
Inflammation.
me, it's about increasing range of motion, increasing
Yeah.
mobility for functional movements, and it's also about a reduction in inflammation and just an overall. Like when I stretch or really stretch, like I feel pretty good, but I'm just
Yeah.
not consistent with it. And I know yoga, there's a physical aspect of it, but as our instructor is going to tell us, there's also very much a mental aspect of it. And
Yeah.
as a traditional sort of football, baseball, sports,
It's
traditional
aggressive. It's go, go,
male.
go.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but it's more like I always looked at yoga as kind of like, I'm gonna be honest, I just looked at it as like this is kind of lame. I'm not putting on a like tight pants. I'm not gonna sit there Indian style and do these weird breathing things
You're
as I
not going to
was
shave
younger.
or cut your hair while you're doing
Right.
yoga at all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I'm gonna wear hemp clothing.
Yeah.
Like I'm not
Yep.
like it just
It's
seemed
got it's
too,
got the hippie vibe a little bit,
which isn't
which isn't fair,
me,
but it's
which it isn't fair and it wasn't me, so I avoided it, right?
sure.
And I mentally was dismissed it,
Yep.
and that was the wrong thing. And I'm ready. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm ready to commit to it and to see how it would change. So that's my thoughts on yoga. Like, where do you sit with it?
Yeah, very similar. I think, like our expert said, and she'll share with you, one of the important things and one of the cool things about yoga is it doesn't, it's individualistic. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody. You can tailor yoga to your goals. So, yoga can actually, if you are a weightlifter, if you are an endurance athlete, like it can give you more access to power through a greater range of motion. And, your power level changes throughout different ranges of motion. So if you can get a more expanded uh, range of motion, then you can get more access to power. You can do some things that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. But also, I think from an injury prevention perspective too, as we get a little bit older, I don't like to look at, like, I'm 41. You're 40, 44,
5.
45. My gosh, no,
Old.
like, yeah, like I honestly, like, I've never, aside from a few acute, stiffness in the lower back and things like that, like I feel pretty good. But I know I can feel better. And this is I think a tool that will help that. If you can become more flexible, it does allow you, it allows you to run a little bit longer. It allows you to lift a little bit harder. It can allow you to just feel more comfortable lying in bed, for crying out loud. I mean, sometimes you're lying in bed and you get a stiff back. You're like, what is going on? I'm not even doing anything.
Yeah,
So
I know.
yeah,
Or
so
sitting in the
I'd like
car.
to, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get sciatic nerve pain and whatever else. So yeah, I'm just trying to get more flexibility out of it, get more mobility, more injury prevention. And honestly, it's an opportunity to slow things down. I mean, how busy you're running around probably like a chicken with your head cut off. You're an organized guy. You have to be to manage everything that you do. But it's still like I'm looking forward to whether it's a half an hour, 45 minutes or an hour of just slowing things down, kind of regrouping and just pushing my body to do some things that it hasn't done before, which is what will prompt change. That's where you get adaptations, where you get little, get outside the comfort zone, like we've been saying.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these next ones briefly. I've got, let's talk about embracing veganism. Becoming a vegetarian is
Those are two different things.
There are
Are
two
we
different
going
things.
vegan or are we going vegetarian?
I think we'll
Let's start
probably
with
go.
vegetarian.
Let's start with vegetarian.
Baby.
The idea of this challenge is to eat the way our bodies were designed to eat, and we'll talk about the data and all that stuff later. But our society and marketing, and especially marketing around men, you got to eat meat to be strong. You got to get your protein from eating flesh,
chicken, brown rice, and broccoli.
Yep. The
3
reality
meals
is
a day.
it's all a lie, right? I mean, we've all been fooled, and our bodies are actually not designed to eat this way, and that's why you have such an incredible rate of heart disease, diabetes, and all these things that are just stifling our healthcare system. So, rather than being a victim of that, we're gonna eat nothing but what some of the strongest animals in the world eat: plants.
Plants.
So what's going to be the hardest thing for you about that?
All of it. No, I eat a fair amount of plants, but I also am a meat eater. I eat meat for dinner every night except for one. So dinner, I'll be fine during the day. To be honest, I'm not a heavy eater during the day. But come dinner time, I mow down. So yeah, definitely just strictly cutting out the meat is going to be a challenge, for sure, that I'm not super excited about. And I'm curious to see the energy levels with this one. Are they going to improve? Are they going to decrease? My suspicion is that there'll be an adjustment period, right? Like you might feel it at first. Your body's adapting to this new source of energy that you're providing it. And at first, the more you learn about the gut, the more sense this makes. But at first, there has to be some change that takes place on the inside. But ultimately, your gut is like a muscle. Like it will change, it will adapt for you. And if you're feeding it the right things, it will pay you back for it. So what I thought was interesting is that, and one of the reasons why we wanted to do this vegetarian challenge is, so there's two systems in your body that are outward facing: your respiratory system and your digestive system. It's outward facing, like it's exposed to the environment. And so it's pretty well known that smoking is bad for your respiratory system. Like that's pretty universally understood. People still do it. They accept the risk, right? But I don't think it's as well accepted and understood that eating a poor diet of processed foods that really have no nutritional value is equally damaging to your intestinal tract and your gut, which is connected to everything. It's connected to your lungs. It's connected to your brain. It's connected to your immune system.
We're made of food.
We are made of food. We're made up of cells. Cells eat food. They eat what we eat. And the microbiome, all the microbes in your gut, the microbiota, that's who you're feeding. That's what you're feeding. That's it. Like if you don't have the right microbiome or the right microbes in your gut, that's where food sensitivities come from. It's not that you're allergic to nuts or beans or whatever. It's that you don't have the right microbes to break those things down. You can't process that fiber. They have enzymes that we don't, which is crazy to think about. So you're feeding your gut, and that's so pinnacle and important for your health, is to optimize the gut.
You're feeding the fungus, bacteria, and viruses that live in your gut, and they're eating and pooping inside of you. And we did a great couple podcasts with some incredible experts in the area of microbiome that really learned a ton about gut health. So, everyone said all evidence points towards eating a plant-based diet. So it's not how we're conditioned, right? It's not
at all.
it's not our condition, but it's, if you break it down and you look at these bodies that have been built over hundreds of millions of years, they have
Yeah,
evidence to show that the gladiators, these gigantic men, that, were just superior athletes way back, they were all
yeah,
vegan, right?
yeah,
Tom
yeah,
Brady, vegan, top
yeah.
Olympians, vegan. There's something
Don't
to it.
don't get me going on Tom Brady. No, he's a picture of health, but I'm a suffering Jets fan, so
Well, I mean,
sore
let's be
spot,
honest,
sore
you're a
spot.
Jets fan. We should do
Yeah,
30-day challenge where you stop watching the Jets play during football season. You'd probably, blood pressure would
that's
probably
easy.
decrease.
I've already done that. Success.
Successful.
Yep.
After
No,
week
but
4, you're like, oh, they're 0-4. We're done.
yep,
Thanks.
done.
Thanks for
Yep,
another
football's
season.
over. Sweet. Yeah. But no, like when you look at the evolution of the human race, it's paper thin the period of time that you have food in your cupboards constantly. Like we're overfed, we're overfed and malnourished at the same time. So we're just eating and eating and eating constantly. You're never giving yourself rest, but yet we're malnourished because we're eating stuff that has no substance to it.
Mhm.
And so that when you eat plants the way that you are designed to eat, and I think there's an argument to be made too that evolutionarily speaking, and if you're looking from an ancestral standpoint, I mean, I think our ancestors did eat meat. They were hunters and gatherers. So it's not to say that meat is bad. It's nothing is good, nothing is bad. If you do too much of the same thing, yeah, you can cause some problems. But variety is very important. That's what develops and helps you manifest a strong, healthy gut. And the more plants that you can eat throughout the week, the better. It's not about you don't have to eat 60 different plant varieties in a day. That's challenging. But within a week, if you can get over 30, is what I've heard in the research I've done. If you can get over 30 different varieties, like sit down, like take a minute, sit, like write down or just think about in your head, how many different plants do you eat in a week? Like just take a second, do that. Not you, but I'm just saying in
I
general.
can't even, I
And
can't even think of 30, to be honest with you.
yeah, yeah, I wrote it down and I got with some effort. I had to try to work some things in, but I'm up to like 33, and I feel pretty good about that. But I try to challenge that. It's again not every day, but throughout the week at some point I'll have 33 different plant varieties in my diet. So that's
I love it.
yeah,
So let's
yeah,
talk about a couple more quick here. We've
yeah.
got meditation. So for
Mm,
meditation, briefly
mm,
on my end, I think it's pretty obvious. Like meditation is something that is challenging, I think, for most
mm-hmm.
people to try to. There's so many different forms of meditation. Is it Buddhist meditation? There's apps. There's
Yeah,
called Headspace. There's all different types of angles that you can go. But the idea is very similar to what you said about yoga. It's about slowing the day down, getting
yeah,
yourself in the right mindset, and preparing yourself or resetting yourself later, which I know meditation can be used for that as well. So
yeah.
I've tried it before in the past. I've never been
Same.
consistent with it, but anyone that you hear that makes it a consistent practice, say it changes their life. So why
Yep.
not give it 30 consistent days under the
Mm-hmm.
guidance of somebody who really knows what they're doing to try to meditate? See, can we
Yeah.
do this? And is it worth it? Or is it hocus pocus?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You know, again, when it comes to your overall health and your best self, there's I think four pillars. It's your nutrition, which we discussed a little bit. It's your movement, what you choose to do to move and stay active. Motion is lotion.
Hmm.
It's your sleep. We've talked a little bit about that. And then it's stress management. And stress management is so critical, I feel like. And I'm excited to do the meditation challenge to hopefully finally be able to make I really want to make that a habit because like you, I've tried it and I have like the focus of the Tasmanian devil. Like I got nothing. I'm all all over the place. And I think with guidance, I would imagine that they would probably tell you it in the beginning, at least, like just let your thoughts bounce from one thing to another at first. Like don't because you end up stressing about the fact that you can't focus, and then you're focused about the stress, and it's like a negative feedback loop. So, um, but yeah, to try to make meditation an actual strategy that we could use on a daily basis for me, I'm excited about that one because I think stress is another big time contributor to poor health in the country. We live a very chaotic kind of lifestyle. Usually, we're on the go. We're underslept, overworked, just constantly in a state of stress. And perceived stress is really no different than traumatic stress, like an actual physical injury. If your mind thinks it and feels it, your body's going to respond the same way. It's going to have an
Can't tell the
inflammatory
difference.
response. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And when you're always stressed, it's a chronic situation, right? So if you're chronically responding to stress, eventually that's kicking one of those legs out of the four legs of the chair. It's kicking one out. You're going to fall over. You're going to have an issue. And
Agreed.
so, yeah, anything we can do
Agreed.
to reel that in is all for the better. So I'm psyched
So
about that one.
I'm pumped about that one as well.
Yeah.
Next, we've got now this one's interesting. So this one is more about learning something, and there's all about
Mm,
learning things. But the next one is and we've got a couple in this category. One is to learn a new instrument. So commit to an hour of practice, if not an hour and a half, every day for 30 straight days.
mm.
And for an instrument you've never touched in your life or wanted to play but couldn't play, and see what type of impact or improvement you can make in 30 days. For me, it's the ukulele because I feel like it's only got, no one plays that. It's pretty portable. I can bring it to the campfire and has
Yeah.
a nice little strum to it. So,
Oh, it's an awesome
yeah.
instrument.
What about
Yeah.
you? You got an instrument of choice there in terms of trying to
So
suffer
this
through the
is
struggle of learning?
I'm gonna choose a horn of some kind, I think. So
Okay.
maybe a saxophone.
Oh, a
That's my first
saxophone.
thought. Yeah, because
Nice.
that's
That's sexy.
soulful, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I can. If I gotta think about that a little bit. I might need to test it out. I played the guitar when I was younger. Like I started in high school. I played through college and a couple years after. So I think that would be cheating. I'll just jump right in and start playing Stairway to Heaven. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
this is easy.
I can't play the plastic recorder that you used to have to play in third grade that your mom knitted a sock
Yeah,
for it to be able to
yeah.
play. Like I have the most
I think I could do
musically,
Mary Had a Little Lamb on that one,
I
on the
can't even play the
recorder.
chopsticks on the piano. Like literally, I'm the
Yeah.
worst music. I'm terrible. So
I
that
might
that
do the
would,
keyboard. My dad is a really good pianist, and my sister actually played as well. And so maybe it's in the blood. So maybe I can,
might be.
yeah. And
Yeah,
trying to
it's
go
not a
like
mine.
left hand, right hand is the challenge, right? Which actually leads us into another
That's another
challenge. But
challenge. So
yeah,
you want to mention that challenge
yeah. So doing normal activities with your non-dominant hand. So brushing
for
your teeth
30 days?
30 days. Yeah, yeah. We have to decide how strict we're going to be with that. We That might also go hand in hand with like a caloric restriction because I'm not going to be able to get food into my mouth. With my left hand, it's going to be all over my lap. But yeah, I think that one's going to be fun. Brushing your teeth with your left hand, eating with your left hand. Are we going to do writing? We're actually going to like try to write with our left hand.
That might
I'm
be
going
a
to be
bit of that
so
might
unproductive.
really unproductive. We'll
Yeah.
have to think of some other ones. But the idea behind this challenge is that it stimulates different parts of your brain.
Right.
And if any of you have ever tried to do certain simple actions, like Brian said, brushing your teeth with your opposite hand, try it. Try it tonight. Try
Hmm.
to brush your hands, brush your teeth with the opposite hand.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, for all intents and purposes,
Challenge.
I'm right-handed. You might as well
Hmm.
saw my left arm off.
Hmm.
It's just don't need it. And that's a problem. We
Yeah.
need to start to activating those and getting those neurotransmitters to fire and to
Yeah.
trying different things. What
Yeah.
about the charitable challenge? So you want to talk about that one? This one's about giving back.
Yeah, yeah, which we actually opened this up a little bit to on Facebook to some viewer requests, and that one came up more than a couple times, which was awesome. I mean, I think this is obviously another one that you can easily get excited about. Um, so we haven't quite gotten the details down. We've discussed whether so for 30 days straight we are going to do something charitable, whether that be volunteer our time at an organization that could use some help. That and we can kind of decide which organizations those are, ones that speak to us, because I think it's got to be important to you to actually put your heart and soul into it, and I think that's what they deserve. All these organizations. So yeah, it could be a volunteer your time type of situation. It could be something as simple as I don't buying a homeless person a meal, a hot cup of
Mhm.
coffee, but doing something to give back on a charitable level. It's not just about, okay, I'm going to donate $100 a day for 30 days straight. That gets pricey.
Has to take some
Um,
effort, right? It
it's
has
got
to
to
take
take
some
it's
effort.
got to take some effort, and I think in general you get out of things what you put into it. So you put positivity into the universe, and positivity tends to come back your way. Not that that's why you would do it, but there's a lot of people that are less fortunate. I think if you sit back and count your blessings, even on tough days, if you can remind yourself of everything we are so fortunate for that others aren't. It's pretty easy to get behind this one. So yeah, I don't know. I probably didn't answer that question super well, but
No, you did. Yeah,
some
I
form
think
of charity.
it's some form of giving and giving
Yeah,
back and paying it forward, and something
pay
that
it forward. Yep.
requires an effort. It's not just like, giving somebody $20.
Yeah.
It's about giving them your time, your love, your attention,
Yeah.
and to, we're all busy, right? We
Yep.
all have a lot of things that we do, and some give more than others. And to be intentional with it, to see what how that feels, right? And
Yeah.
and what glory that can come from that, I think will be awesome. All right, so the next challenge that we want to discuss, this will be the last challenge you probably discussed, and it's one that I think Brian does not want me to bring up, but I'm going to bring it up
Nope.
anyway because it's
Nope.
about holding each
Don't do
other
it.
accountable. So here we go. So for those who are in the kind of the CrossFit space or into exercise and working out and all that stuff, there's a workout that's dedicated to a fallen soldier. It's called the Murph. The Murph is Brian. Why don't you tell the listeners what the Murph is? The Murph workout. Yeah.
So the Murph is 1 mile run followed by 300 air squats, 200 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, and you finish it off with another 1 mile run. You
for
can break
time.
for time. Oh yeah, for time. And the idea, I think, of the actual Murph is so you do it with a 20-pound weighted vest, which is supposed to simulate, like a soldier's pack. They do all this stuff with a 20-pound pack of goods that they got to carry around. So you do it with a 20-pound weighted vest, and I think it's permissible to break up the rep count. So like you could do a series of 15, 10, and 5, and do that for 20 rounds to hit your 300 air squats, your 100 pull-ups, and your 200 push-ups. So it is a feat. I think doing it in 2 hours would be a pretty good run at it, I believe, from what I understand. So this is going to be a tough one to do 30 days in a row.
Yeah, so that's typically a workout that you do, and then you can't move for a couple of days afterwards for someone who's in respectable shape.
Yeah, it's funny because I talked about training for this to do it once, a singular time. like yeah, I could train for that. I could probably do a Murph on Memorial Day.
Murph.
I can honor Murph. Yeah.
So now we want to do it every day for a month. And I think the goal is, in the beginning, obviously it's going to be a little ugly, and then over time to see how our body adjusts and adapts, and the things that we need to do from a stretching and yoga perspective and stuff to stay injury-free.
Best way to train for a Murph is to do a bunch of Murphs.
Right. My old triathlon coach was like, I was like, hey, I want to learn how to swim faster. She goes, then we're going to have to swim faster. That's how to swim faster. You need to swim fast. Yeah. It's pretty simple concept. To be good at this, we just have to go through the adaptation and the change. And it's amazing to see how the body adapts. So that one, that we're going to just put out several months. Brian's expecting a child here, him and his wife, in September, I believe he said.
Yeah. September 23rd, baby girl. Number
so
2.
Not going to do it then. That's it.
Shutting down the farm.
Shutting it down. So that'll be one of the challenges that we do, and we got a bunch more. So we're actually going to have a form on the website page for those of you who want to make a suggestion for a challenge you'd like to see us suffer through before maybe you consider suffering through it yourself. Please put it in there, put in the details and what you think and your email address. And if we choose your challenge, then we also may choose that you join our podcast and join along with us in the pain and the suffering, because it was your idea.
There's strength in numbers. Let's all
definitely strength in numbers. So with that said, I'm super pumped, Brian, to have you as an accountability partner, somebody to kind of get me through this, and hopefully get you through this, and to really learn a lot about ourselves and about a bunch of interesting stuff we've never tried.
I'm grateful that you extended the opportunity to me. This is awesome. It's fun just to be on a podcast. I listen to so many, and I listen to yours, and it's a really, really great podcast. You got fantastic guests. You ask all the right questions. You pull the right information out that's useful and relevant, and it's motivating. And so, I mean, just to be a part of it on any level is a huge source of excitement for me. And I can't wait to progress, move it forward, get into these challenges, and just have fun with it, and hopefully grow and become,
and touch your toes
and touch my toes. if I do nothing else, I'm going to touch my
Nothing
damn
else
toes.
comes. She wants to touch his toes. I can't
Yeah.
wait for the reunion.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, thank you everyone for listening to the show this week. Brian and I are super excited to get on with this. So the first episode of the Change 30, or should I say the second episode of Change 30, this is the first, will be yoga. So
Yoga.
thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Hey everybody, thank you for listening to the Adapt You podcast today. Our goal with this show and all of our content is to deliver you the guests and the respective knowledge necessary to help you change something in your life. Everyone who listens to this show has something they want to affect and something they want to change. And our goal is to help give you the knowledge necessary to take you down that path on becoming the absolute best version of yourself. If you like what you heard today, please tune in to all of our shows and also check us out in social media. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and check out our website and have some great content on there as well. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next show.